Welcome to the part 2 of the tutorial on building an online compiler using Burnstack. Now, if you haven't watched the first video yet, I have attached a link right up there and I recommend you to watch it. In this video, we are going to work a lot on the backend side. To start off, we'll add an option to submit your codes in Python and set your default languages as well. The output now features the live status of your job execution on the backend, along with the details like the execution time of your code and the time at which your job was submitted. Now, it might not look like a lot of changes on the front end, but things have improved considerably on the backend side. The second part focuses more on adding MongoDB inside your Node.js application. We'll switch from a simple post request model to a more advanced and scalable long polling model for getting the status of your job execution. Along with that, we'll also add background workers using the bull queue that will help us handle large concurrent requests at a single time. Now, if you're unfamiliar with any of the concepts that I just talked about right now, just hang on and I'll explain them on a whiteboard while we code the application. Now, at the end of this video, I'll also be sharing some tips on how you can make the front end more beautiful for your users. So stay tuned for that and let's get started right away. Now, moving over to the app.js file, I'll create another variable called language. Just like we had created code, I'll create language using the useStateHook and set CPP as its default value. Now to use this value, I'll create a drop-down menu just above the editor. To do that, I'll use a select statement and add options for C++ and Python. Now let's see how it looks. It has gone towards the side, so this means these are inline elements, so I'll just separate them out from the flow so they don't line up side by side, and here we go, they just come on top of each other. Now there is no gap in between them, so I'll add a BR tag to separate them out. Yep. Now to tell the users that you can change the language from here, I'll use the label tag before the select statement and I'll write language. So this will bring up language here. I'll give some space. Now is the time to use the language and the set language variables that we created using the useStateHook. So just like we did it for the code, I'll set the value as language, and in onChange, I'll pass in an arrow function. So what this arrow function will receive is the event as the parameter, and I'll use the set language functions and set the value as e.target.value. Now this should do our job. Just when we change Python, it should set this language variable as Python. Now let's check if this is working. So I'll console log e.target.value and let's see. I will open up the console in the Chrome browser and here we will change the language. So I changed the language, it says C++ and Python. But we don't need this actually, we need CPP and Py. So what we'll do is we'll set their value. So it will be kind of a key value. Key would be C++ and the value would be Py. Now let's see if this works. CPP and Py. Yeah. Now I think we are done with the front end for now. So I'll just head over to the backend and see if we are receiving the correct response. So I'll console.log language to see what language we are receiving. I'll start the server and send a request here. So we got a CPP request, and if I change it to Python, I get a Py request, and obviously we get an error because we haven't handled the Python part yet. So that's okay. And just to be sure, I'll also console log the length of the code that we receive. Okay, we have to restart the server again. So we get Py101. So okay, this is 101 characters long. Now this is becoming really tedious to like restart the server again and again. So I'll just go ahead and install a dependency called nodemon. And to use this dependency, I'll create a script inside of package.json saying nodemon index.js. Now if I run this script using npm run dev, this will keep watching index.js and any other related files. Now let's go ahead and check this. If it restarts, yep, it restarts, so everything's working correctly. Now as you might remember, we had sent a language to the generate file function, so we are pretty sure that even if we send a Python file, it will create a .py file and not a cpp file, so we don't need to worry about that. Our next job would be to create a function similar to execute cpp that will help us run the Python file. To do that, I'll open the Explorer and create a simple copy of this, and I'll create a copy and I'll rename this execute py because the structure is going to be very similar. So now here there's one different thing, that C++ was a compiled language. This means that it read the code and create a output file. Then we ran the output file. But Python, as you know, it is a interpreted language, so we won't need an output file. So I'll go ahead and delete this output path. We don't need this directory as well. We don't need this output path. I'll change the name of the function to execute py, and I'll also change the export to execute py. Now the only remaining thing is to change this command. So we use the G++ compiler for the C++, but here we'll use the Python compiler. We don't need any output, or we don't need to run any output file. So I'll just remove all of that. And also, since we don't remove fs and path, I'll remove these. Now we'll add a condition over here, a simple if statement that if the language is cpp, we use the execute cpp function. Otherwise, we use the execute py function. That's it, as simple as that. I'll remove this const output. Now since these have gone into the separate blocks, I'll have to bring out the output variable outside. So this is done. I'll try to submit a Python code from this. So I'll say hello Python, and let's see what output we get. We click submit and we get hello Python. And if we go to C++, we have this default code, and if I click submit again, it gives the output as hello world. Now this might look a little bit weird that C++ response was a little late than Python, but that wasn't really the fault of C++ being slow or anything like that. It's just that it took a little bit more time to write the file, to compile it, and then execute it. So execution time will still be much less than what it took for Python. Now if I send over a wrong Python code, so let's see what happens. If I send print bracket, it just gives me an error. It doesn't show any output or anything, but we should actually get a response here. That error output should be shown here. Now inside this handle submit function, we actually forgot to set the output, like the error output. So I'll go ahead and destructure the response out of the error object. Now there might be two cases that can exist, that we can get an error response when the server is running, and if we have any network issues or the server is down, we won't get a response. So I'll make a condition here that, hey, if you have a response, then set the output, else just say that we will use the window.alert saying error connecting to server, and inside the response I'll just console log it for now so you can see what are we getting. I'll submit this again, so console.log. Now I'll check what happens. So I'll write print bracket, and it says that we get this response here. So the actual error message is contained inside the data err std err. So I'll just extract these out. So const err message is equal to response.data.err, dot stdr. So I'll just set the output as error message. And actually here we can just do a simple improvement. We don't need to make a pop-up alert. We can just set the output as error connected to server. And I'll restart this. And let's see what we get. Yep, so we have this error shown here now. Line 2, invalid syntax. Okay. Hello world. Submit. We get hello world response here. And now if I just close the server for a moment and again submit the request, it will show error connected to server. Now, like in our case, when we have deployed it on our local host and only our browser is asking the server for job execution, it won't be a lot of problem. But imagine you deploy your app on the internet and you start getting thousands of concurrent requests at every second. Then you might see that like this computer shown here in the red, it might not be able to connect to your server, or worse, your server might crash. This happens mainly because of two reasons. One, you have limited amount of memory. So all these connections that you make, they get assigned some IDs and the live connection is stored in your memory. So as soon as you deplete that or you exceed the RAM, it cannot handle more connections, and after that the connections start getting failed. The second reason is that if you have a long running code, like suppose the code goes beyond 15 or 20 seconds, the Express thinks that, okay, I don't think I'll be able to get the response from this request. So I just send a gateway timeout error to the front end. This is how our current model looks like. So we firstly send a post/run request. We then generate a file path. We then execute it and then send a response back. The bottleneck of our flow is this execute file path. Now a simple solution comes into mind that, okay, you can generate the file path and you can tell the client that, hey, we have taken your code and we'll execute it. But on the client, how will it know that what the status is? Because once a response is sent, you cannot send something back again. The connection gets closed right up there. So now the flow would look something like the 4 becomes a 3 and the third step becomes the fourth step. But now after this fourth step, we'll be able to just console log it. We won't be able to do anything about it. Here comes the role of the database. So if I send post/run, then I generate the file and then I insert all the language and file details into a database and then send the ID of this job back to the client. I can then ask to the server again the status of this job, and we can let the file path being executed right in the background. Now let's understand how this checking mechanism will work. For that, I'll create another route called /status and I'll send the ID of this job back. So when I posted it, I got an ID as a response. Now I'll ask with the same ID that, hey, what is the status of this job? Now in the background, this execute file path will still be running because of a long running job. So this will happen independently. It will just ask, hey, what's the status? The server will fetch the database for the job and then send the job response back. Now this will happen continuously until the database knows that, okay, the job is completed. So we can have states like pending, success, or error. If it is still pending, the client will keep asking for it, and as soon as it is a success or it errors out, the client will stop asking for the request. This is normally what we call polling, and you can see its examples on websites like Codeforces and CodeChef, where you get updates at every 250 or 500 milliseconds, and it's not a live stream of data. So this saves us from a lot of long connections to be maintained, and these are just very simple short queries like 100 or 200 millisecond queries. So they are not a very big load on the server. Let's implement what we have learned so far. So in the section 2 of this video, we'll be adding a NoSQL database called MongoDB. Make sure you have the MongoDB installed on your system, and you can run the command like mongodb --version, and it will give you a version that is installed on your computer. To start with this, we'll use a library called Mongoose. If you head over to the documentation, it says that Mongoose is an ORM library that helps you easily communicate with the MongoDB database using your JavaScript code. we'll use this command called npm install mongoose save. I'll just copy this, close the server, and type this command. Now to implement this, we'll follow this guideline which says that we have to first require it and then call the connect function. So going over into the index.js, I'll use const mongoose equal to require mongoose, and then before everything starts up, I'll just copy this line, copy the entire line, format it, and here you can see that it connects the URL on localhost 27017 is automatically inferred, and test is the name of the database. So we'll not use test, we'll do something like compiler app. So this will be the name of our database and the default specifications. Now in addition to this, I'll also send a callback function that will be fired when a connection is successful. So it will have a error parameter here. If error exists, I'll just console.error and process.exit 1. So the process will be exit, and if there is no error, I'll just console log. So that's what I will log, and let's see if it works. So I'll restart the server, npm run dev. It is listening to port 5000 and it is connected to MongoDB database. Now every time you hit a submit button, there will be a job that will be executed. So a job will basically contain the language, the code, and the other metadata associated with the job. Now I'll create a new folder inside the backend folder called models, and inside this I'll create a new file called job.js. Inside this I'll write the standard code for creating a model. So const mongoose equal to require mongoose, const job schema is equal to mongoose. We'll just create a simple schema for now, and I'll leave that empty for now, and I'll create a job. Const job is equal to new mongoose.model. The name of this collection inside the database would be job, and it will take job schema as a parameter. Now we'll export it as a default export, so I'll just say module.export equal to job. Now we'll fill up the job schema. So firstly we'll need a language whose type would be string. It will be required, like it will be mandatory while creating this object, and it will be an enum, so it will only accept values that are present in this array, and you will need the file path. So file path would be nothing but a string. It will be required to create it. We'll have the submitted at time, like when it was this request submitted to our backend server. It will be of the type date, and it will have the default value of date.now. We'll have this started at. So when did this job started executing? This will be helpful for us when we actually calculate the time it took for completion. So completed at type date. After this, what do we need? Now that the job has executed, we'll need its output. So output would be type string, and it won't be required because they will be assigned to it afterwards. It will also have a status. So what the status will be, it will be of a type string. The default value would be pending, that the job has still not started executing yet, and it will also be a enum. So it will be either pending, success, or error. Now come over to index.js and import that model that you have just created. So that will be job, and since it's a default export, I have not added curly braces around it, and this is imported. Now since you know that we actually need the file path to show the job, we'll wait for this to complete, and after this statement we'll create the new job object. So const job is equal to await new job. So we'll send the language, we'll send the file path, right? Save. So this will create a new job object. Let's just console log this for now and see what are we getting. I'll submit a new job here again. submit. And here you can see that we have created a new entry in the database. Const job ID is equal to job ID. And once it's done, we'll just send this job ID back. So what I'll do, how do you send a response? Saying status 201. 201 basically says that okay, a new resource was created. So success is true. And here is the job ID that you needed. This will be returned straight away. We'll not use return here because the function still needs to continue below it. So I'll just console log it here, and this response would be sent to the front end, and then we'll execute the code. So as you can see that now the response doesn't wait for the code to complete as long as it can get. We'll have a job ID on the front end here. After this, if we try to do rest.json, it will result in an error because you will be overwriting the response object, which is not allowed. So instead of returning this, I just console log this. So file and output, I'll comment this out, and console.log error, and I'll comment this out as well. Now just to see what output we'll be getting here in the console, I'll go ahead and console log the response that we get from this route now. So here we have const data. We'll just console log this and see what we get. Console.log data. The output would be undefined because it does not exist, but we don't care for it right now. We have a minor error here. I'll just correct it to file path, send it again, and here we have the file path and the output as well. It wasn't sent back to the client, but we still received it. This means that the code was executed. Also, we have got the job ID here as we intended. Now before we start executing this file, I'll assign the started at time. So this is where we start the job. So that will be just new date. And once we exit out of this, this means that it has completed successfully. If it has not errored out, the code will reach here, else it will jump into the catch block. So if we are below this, we can be sure that the code has executed perfectly. So I'll just say that the job was completed at new date, like the current date at this time. Job status is success, and job output is output. Yeah. Now I'll save this file. So I'll just do .await job.save and just console log this job now because we have everything in job. Inside the catch block, I will write, but here we don't have it since job was defined in the try block. Like here it was defined in try block, so it won't be available in the catch block. Let's assign it outside of it. Let job const, we remove it, job is equal to await new job, and inside this we know that this is errored out. So job completed at is equal to new date. A little code duplication doesn't hurt. Job status is error, and job output, we'll just store the error in the output field. Error could be a complicated object to handle, so we'll just json.stringify error, and now we'll again save this job.save, and then I'll again console log job. Now inside this, I'll jump over to Python. So I go to Python, print hello world, and then I'll submit this. So we got success true job ID. We didn't get the response here. So firstly, the status was pending, and now the status is success. To make it more clear, I'll just output this job ID in the output field on frontend. So I'll go over to app.js, and here instead of setting the output as data.output, I'll just set it data.jobid for now. I'll refresh it, then I'll send it again, and here I get the job ID. Now to implement polling, we'll need to have a separate endpoint at which we can query that what is the status of this ID that we have just received. To create this, I'll go over to the index.js file. I'll just collapse this code. We don't need this app.get right now. And then I'll create a new route called /status, and it will be an async function request response objects. Now this is what the status request will look like. So as you can see that there is a id query param here. Now to extract that, we'll do const job id is equal to rec.query.id. Now if this id does not exist, if job id is equal to undefined, I'll just return a response with a status 204 which says that you have a bad request, and the message would be JSON success false, and error is that missing id query param. So I'll go over to localhost 5000/status, and this will give me that success false error missing query param. And if everything is good, I should get the job ID here. So I'll console log it and then check again. So ID is equal to 433 something, and we get a console log. We obviously didn't send a response here, so that's why this is spinning right now. Now once we have this job ID, I'll try to find this inside the database. So const job is equal to await new job dot find by ID. This will find by the ID job ID. I'll just try catch it for now. So try catch error, and we'll just return rest.status 400.json success false error would be, I'll just stringify this error. And here if we are not able to find this, so if job is equal to undefined, then return rest.status 404 that resource not found, success is false, error is, so that we are done with it. And now we are sure that we have this job here in this line. So I'll just send return rest.status is 200 success response, and I'll do .json and job. I'll also console log this. So console log status requested job ID. Now there's a slight error that we have to fix. Whenever finding by ID, please remove this new job.find by ID. This will give an error. So I'll have this code here. I'll click on submit. This job is executed and I get this ID. So I'll now make a request to status ID. I change this ID to this, and here I get a success response. Now I will show you where the difference is. So suppose we have this Python code where import time, and we are sleeping for like 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds till 5 seconds, and then I print I. So this code will take approximately 15 seconds to complete. And now I'll click submit. Here we get a status of pending. Now I'll copy this ID and check what the status is. So it's pending, and then I again query after 1 second, still pending, and now it has become a success. So yeah, as you can see that we would make queries until it becomes a success. The refresh thing that we did here, that we were refreshing this page at about 500 milliseconds or 1 second each. This is a very simple example of what we call polling. Here we are doing it manually by hand, that we are clicking the refresh button, but we'll instead do that using code in JavaScript using the setInterval function. Now before moving on to implementing polling in our app, I have to make a small change here in index.js. We are just sending a job here. Instead, I'll enclose this in curly braces, and also send a success flag along with it. Now to implement polling, we'll be using a set interval function given to us by JavaScript. We'll implement this function once we get a success response from the server. So that is when this const data and then we set an output. We can start the long polling set interval function here. Now I'll write set interval and send an arrow function inside this and set the interval of refresh to 1000 milliseconds. So at every second this function will run. Let's make this function to an async one since we have to make an access request. Now I'll write const data and use it as data res to avoid conflict with the data written above, and I'll make a get request to http localhost 5000 status, and instead of the payload I'll be sending the job ID here as a param. So inside params I'll write ID is equal to data.job ID. Now we'll console log it first. So console.log data res and see what we get. So I have this Python code here and I'll click on submit. Here we get the first response with the job ID and then we start getting these job state details. So I have job pendings until we get a success. So once we get this success or an error, we have to stop this clear interval. Now there can be multiple cases where even this request can fail. So the success that we'll receive would be true or false. So firstly, I will destructure it out of it. So it will be success, job or an error out of the data res. Now moving logically, we can firstly make a condition that if my request was a success or not. So I'll do this, and if it was an error, I'll just console.log error here. I will set error, set output as the error, and inside this success we'll just extract the status as job status and output as job output. So we just extract these things out, and if the status is pending, if the job status is pending, I won't do anything, I'll just return out of the loop. So here I write return, and when this is done, I'll set output as the job output. So when I get a success whose status is anything other than pending or an error, I'll have to stop this loop. We'll use the clear interval function to clear this loop. So to do that, I'll make another variable, let interval ID. Set interval returns an ID through which we can call the clear function. So let interval ID is equal to set interval, and inside this, if the job is not pending, I'll use clear interval, and also in the case of error I'll use clear interval. Now just to see when this interval works, I'll also console.log this data res object. Now I'll click on submit error and see what we get. We start getting these responses at each second, and now we can see that it has stopped. Now it is not very convenient right now because the user won't be able to know whether it is still pending or it was a success. So we'll now go ahead and add a status variable to it. Below the output, we'll again create a variable called status and set status using the useState hook. The default value would be an empty string. Also we set the job ID in the output field, so I'll create a different field for that. Set job ID is equal to useState and initialize it with a default string here. And if we go below this, we will add two things here. We'll firstly set the status, and then I will use another paragraph tag and will create a condition that if the job ID exists, I will reformat the string saying job ID is job ID. Now inside the handle submit function, we'll change this function to set job ID. The outputs are being set fine, and we'll also set the status here, set status as it is job status, and if we get an error, we would say error. So I've written this code here. Let's check what we get. So I click on submit. The job ID is set. It is still pending, and here we get a success response. Also, we can make one more change here, like before sending this request, before sending a new request, I can set job ID as an empty string. Okay. Let's try to submit again. Everything resets and then starts. So that makes the experience a little better. With this, we are done with the section 2 of this code. And now let's see how can we add a queue to this app. Now we can further improve this model as well. As you can see that here we have a server, and the server is basically our Express app, and even going further deep, it is just the app.post function which is responsible for executing the file as well. What this also means that the app.get function that we got from the Express is now busy to execute this file path. But actually it was just the But actually, the only responsibility of Express is to take the file and give it to your backend and send a response back. After that, what happens is not a responsibility of Express. So to enable our app to handle large number of concurrent requests in the background, we'll use something what is called a queue. This is what it will look like. So inside this flow, I'll hit the /run post route. It will generate the file. It will insert it into a database. And this would be the fourth step. So I'll send this job in a queue. Now you can see that app.get just sends a response and it sends the file back into the queue. Now these workers which will be running in the background, these will be responsible for executing the code. Now this is how it will function somewhat like. So here's the server, and I'm not considering the client and file part here. I'm just considering how it will happen in the background. So the server pushes the job ID into the queue that, okay, here is one job for you to finish. The worker picks it up from the queue. It processes it. The entire execution function remains the same. It just processes it and updates the database. So you can have multiple workers running in the background which are updating the database and processing the queries without involving our client or the Express app. So as you can see here, these will be two separate portions that will be running completely independent of each other. The check function will just keep asking for the database for any updates, while in the background, the workers do their job. Now let's start with the section 3 of this app, where we will be adding a messaging queue to this app. So for that, we'll be using a library called Bull. Bull gives a very easy solution for us to implement messaging queues inside of Node.js. Also, Bull has a mandatory dependency on Redis. So make sure you have Redis installed on your computer, and you can do something like Redis CLI and click on ping, and you should get a pong. Now let's go over to the Bull official docs. Here we have npm install bull save. So I copy this, I paste it here and let it install. If we just go over this guide quickly, we'll see that they have imported it as queue. They have created a new queue and given it a name. The Redis port I think should be supplied by default. And below this, they are just adding a new object to the queue. And they have created a process function through which it will fetch a job from the queue, process it. Inside the backend, I'll create a new file called jobqueue.js. And inside this file, I'll import the bull library. So this bull. I'll create a new queue called const job queue is equal to new queue. Give it the name of job queue and rest it, everything should be fine by default. And we will add a function through which we can add the job to the queue. So add job to queue, this will be an async function. And we'll just be sending the job ID instead of the entire job object. So I'll receive job ID here and await job queue dot add. The data would be job ID, or I'll just rename it as ID. I will now export this. So module dot export add job to queue and use it here in index.js. So I'll firstly import this const equal to require job key, and this will be add job to queue. Here in app.post/run, once we create the job, I will send this. So add job to queue, job ID, and this will be asynchronously sent to this function, and the rest of the function will continue just like it has been. Inside the job queue, I also have to create a process function. So job queue dot process. The first parameter would be how many concurrent workers do I need. So I'll create a constant variable num workers is equal to 5. So at a single time you can process 5 jobs. I'll create a function here. I'll make it an async one because we'll need it later on. And inside this I get the data property. So now for now just let's console log it and see what we get. Make this new file and we got something new. So here we have this entire big object, and this is nothing but the job that was submitted to a queue. So here we will find a data key. So inside this both job, we have this data key, and it will contain everything that we sent from the add function. So instead of just taking the whole parameter, I'll extract this data value out of it and then again see what happens. So I click submit, and then we just get this job object here. Let's fill this process function up. So inside this now, since we are getting this job ID here, it will be this process's responsibility to fetch this job from the MongoDB database. So let's wire this up. Const job is equal to require models/job, and now here I'll extract the job ID out of it. So the ID would be renamed as job ID in data, and const job is equal to await job dot find by ID. So now we are querying the MongoDB database, and the ID would be nothing but job ID. If job is equal to undefined, I'll throw an error saying, or else I'll just console log that I fetched the job and here are the details, and I'll return true. So I'll send this job again, and it has successfully completed, but now we get a fetch job. So this is coming from this processor function, and we are getting all the details. So now we are sure that we can just execute this file from inside this process worker instead of the app.get. Now you might think that where will this throw error go to? So how will we catch that? Because this is running in the background, we don't have anyone to listen to. So here we have a lot of events that are being emitted from this job queue, and you can listen to them from jobqueue.on, and you can see all these events. So if we throw an error, we get a failed event, and now I'll create a function saying error. So I'll just console log it for now, saying error.data.id failed error.failed region. So whatever you emit in this error object, it will be assigned to the failed region. I'll just replace this job ID with some random string. So 455, and I click the submit job again. Now everything executes, but you can see that we have a job ID. It failed because cast failed for this. So 455 is not a MongoDB valid ID. And similar to this, feel free to experiment with all the other events that we have, like cleaned, completed, paused, or resumed, stuff like that. So you can create a much more better user experience if you listen to these events as well. This is going to be a little bit of complicated process, so just stay with me while I guide you through it. So what we have to do is we have to just migrate all this code into that process function. And what code do we need? We need it from here. So once we send the job to the queue and then we send the response to the front end, now I have to just copy all of this thing, and all this will not be the responsibility of app.get, it will be the responsibility of job.queue. So what did we copy? I copied it from job started at until the end. So here we are sure that we have fetched the job successfully. So now I'll create a new try block and paste all this here. And we'll have to change these things as these are now part of the job and not a free variable. So job.file, but we could have extracted it, but that's fine. We don't need to console log it anymore. We just need to save it. That's fine, we can save this. And inside of here, I just make another catch block with error. We might get an error while generating the file or creating a new job. So I'll just straight up say that return res.status 400, or maybe let's just keep it 500. Let's not blame the user so much. And we send is false and error is json.stringify error. Also before that, we send this bogus ID here. Let's just replace it with the genuine ID that we are receiving. So we just submit it. I forgot to import these functions as well. So const to do this again. So I just hit submit. I still click pending. And let's wait for it. I got a success. So this is running fine. Now how we have improved this, I'll just summarize it for you. That I have this index.js and express apps function is app.get, and we were using that to get the job as well as process it. But it is not the express responsibility to do this. So we gave this responsibility to job queue. Now, as a part of improving the front end, let's just improve the first thing that is a real pain in the rear, that you have to write this template code again and again on every refresh. So, but that wasn't an issue for me personally because it's just as simple as, let's get started with this. I will create a default file firstly, which will contain all the stubs. So we call it stubs, the default code. So default stubs.js. Now in this file, we'll create an object called stubs, which will be an empty object for now. We will export this as a default object, export default stubs, and we'll assign stubs.cpp. We'll assign some code here, and we'll assign some code for file. So when we write it inside this backticks, all the enters and all the spaces, they will be exactly displayed as they are written here. So you don't have to worry about writing /n or stuff like that. I have added these codes here, and now let's just import them in app.js. Now inside this app.js file, I will import stubs from /default stubs.js, and we'll use the use effect here for the first time. I'll tell you what use effect would actually do for us. You can see that the default value of the code variable is empty in this start, but what we need is when we change this language, so suppose when we change from C++ to Python, it should detect this change and directly import that stub from the file. So what use effect will do is we'll use effect. We'll pass an arrow function here, and this also takes an array object that what variables should I watch. If I pass in language here, it means that whenever language changes, this function will be executed again. So it is very simple. I'll use set code and stubs and language. That's it. Now let's just see if it works. I go to Python, it changes to Python because it detected that the language was changed, so it again rerun this code. Now there might be a problem where you have written some code in C++, but now you want to try it again in Python, and you might just accidentally click it here and then all your code goes. So for that, there is a very simple solution that whenever we are changing the language inside the onChange listener, we just ask the user that let response. We'll use the window.confirm and warn the user. Window.confirm warning. Now, if and only if if response is true, only then change it. Otherwise, just leave it as it is. So if I now change this to Python, it asks me, it will remove your current code. Do you wish to proceed? Okay, it does. If I say no, it stays here. This is kind of making a responsible user interface for our users. Now, suppose if you want to just code in Python and not in C++, you will have a problem that whenever you open our site, you will get language C++ as the default one. So to do that, we'll use local storage to store your default language. Now, firstly, I'll go ahead and below this language div, I'll create a new button which says, I'll also add a BR tag to space it out. Button set default, and create an on-click listener set default language. Now above this handle submit, I'll declare the function set default language, and I'll just say that local storage dot set item default language as language. So this is the way you set the item inside local storage. And I'll also console log that language. Now we've got this button here. I'll open up the console so you can see clearly. If I set this as default, it will say that CPP was set as default language. Now where can you see that it was stored? Inside the application tab in the Chrome console, you can go to storage and on your website name. So you can see that this has changed as CPP. Now if I switch it over to Python, okay, thank you, and set it as default, it will now set it as Py. But we still haven't completed it. No one is asking for this value right now. So for that, I will use another use effect function. So use effect. And this will be an empty array. So empty array means that whenever this component is rendered, you run this use effect function. So here we set it as const default lang. Now we'll try to get it. So local storage dot get item default language. If we don't get it, we can just use OR. So this is a nice way of writing JavaScript, that if the first part of your statement is undefined, use this as a default value. So now you just have to do it as set language default lang. Now this will trigger it like a chain. So firstly this function is run, and as soon as we set language, it will detect that okay, the language has changed, so it will set the code automatically. Now let's see if this works or not. The language is Py, default language is Py, and now I refresh it. So you can still see that the default language is now Py, and if I change to C++ now and set it as default and now again refresh it, this will be C++. Now we are not actually using these timestamps that we had stored in our database. So it said submitted at, it was started at, and completed at. So we need to show the execution time, and we can get it by subtracting the completed time and started at. So we can do all those things things, but you can see that these are just strings and not some objects. So to manipulate them, I'll use a library called movement. Now on the client, I'll install the library using npm iMovement. Now since that is installed, I'm now going to import this library. So import movement from movement, and you can also see that the job details that we are getting here, we cannot access it outside the handle submit function. So we'll address that issue first. I'll create another use state variable called job details, so it doesn't collide with the job variable that we had declared inside. Use state and set it as undefined null for now. Now once we are inside the success functions, we are sure that we will be getting a job object along with us. So I'll just set these job details. Now to display this, I'll make a new paragraph tag here and make a function saying render time details. So const render time details, and for now just if we'll first check if job details exist. If they don't exist, I'll just return an empty string, and otherwise I'll just return json.stringify job details to actually see if it works, and I'll click submit. So here's the job, and you can see that we are getting all the data here in success. Now we can go ahead and bring these variables out of it by saying let result. So this will be an empty result string in which we will append all the details that we want to show. So return result here, and in between this I'll append all the stuff. So let's just extract this out. So submitted at is equal to job details. The first thing would be to change the format of that weird timestamp that we are storing by default. So we'll do that by submitted at. We'll reassign this by using the movement. I'll pass the string to string, and I'll append this to the result, and let's just see what we have. So we have got this proper timestamp here. I'll also add submitted at and make this into a variable, and I'll click submit. So it now shows submitted at. Now if the task is pending, we won't be having this completed at and started at variables with us. So no point in converting them into a movement object. So I'll write started at. If both of these don't exist, you just return the result. And after this, I'll create a variable called start, which will be a movement object from started at, the end object, and the execution time would be the difference of them. So I just subtract the start from the end. F.diff start, unit of time has to be seconds, and do I want it to be precise? Definitely, why not? And now I'll just append this to it. So result execution time was execution time S. So here we have the execution time as 0.478 seconds. Now also we need to set the job details as null before sending the request, so that will remove everything. And now I click on submit. It removed everything, job ID, and then I got a success. So that's mostly it. We are done with the app for now. Now I intentionally left some things out, like beautifying this project. So I'll show you how you can do that. You can use these font awesome icons. The UI is like just simple paragraph tags. So you can use Bootstrap to show elements like the large jumbotron or some icons or some good buttons over here. And the text area that we have, it is very simple, like it is primitive, even the tab doesn't work here. So for that you can use the Ace editor and it will give you a more VS Code like look to your app. Now, if you make this again, like if you make a more beautiful one, please let me know. You can email it or give me the link down below in the comments. And with this, we conclude with the second and final part of our tutorial. If you have any queries or any features that you might wish to add to this, but you can't understand how to, please feel free to reach out in the comment section below and I'll try to answer them in as much as depth as I can. And if you're watching this channel for the first time, please subscribe it and share it with your friends. It will help me grow and create more such tutorials for you guys. Thank you.